first rule of power was simple: never let them see you struggle. Animebl had built an empire on that rule. Men feared his silence more than other bosses' threats. His name moved shipments across oceans and made rival families rethink their ambitions. In Manhattan's dim underworld, Adam wasn't just an alpha, he was gravity. Everything bent around him, except his son. The private dining room of Le Nocturne was sealed from the public, thick velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers dimmed low, polished mahogany table stretching beneath a ceiling painted with fading angels. Around it sat 6 alphas in tailored suits, their pheromones sharp with tension as contracts and territories were discussed in low, dangerous tones. Outside, waiters moved like shadows. Inside, the air was suffocating. Adam sat at the head of the table, black suit immaculate, dark hair swept back, eyes colder than the whiskey untouched in front of him. His presence alone kept the others careful, controlled, until the first sharp sound cut through the room. A child's gasp. It was small at first, barely noticeable beneath the murmur of negotiation. Then it came again, short, panicked, uneven. Adam's hand stilled on the contract. Across the room, near the leather sofa set against the wall, 4-year-old Ringo stood frozen. His tiny hands were clenched in the fabric of his sweater. His breathing came too fast, too shallow. One of the alphas had raised his voice during a dispute over dock access. The pheromones in the room had spiked, territorial, aggressive, dominant. Ringo's lower lip trembled. Then he broke. The scream that tore from him wasn't loud. It was desperate. A small body overwhelmed by a room full of predators. Every man at the table fell silent. Adam was already on his feet. He crossed the room in 3 strides and scooped Ringo into his arms, cradling him against his chest. "Ringo," he said, voice low, steady. "You're fine." But the boy wasn't fine. Ringo arched away from him, breath hitching violently. His fingers dug into Adam's collar. Tears streamed down his small face. His heartbeat was frantic against Adam's palm. Adam's jaw tightened. This had been happening more often. Since the bombing. Since the night fire swallowed the car and took Ringo's other father with it. Adam had survived. His son had survived. But something fragile had shattered. "Lower it," Adam ordered without turning around. The alphas immediately suppressed their pheromones. The air shifted, but the damage had been done. Ringo wasn't calming down. He was spiraling. "Sir." The voice was soft, controlled, not fearful. Adam turned his head slightly, and Omega stood near the door. Slim, dark hair tied back neatly, white shirt, black vest, Le Nocturne's uniform. He couldn't have been older than 24. His eyes were steady, not defiant, but not submissive either. Adam didn't remember seeing him enter. "Who let staff inside?" one of the alphas snapped. The Omega didn't look at them. He looked only at the child in Adam's arms. "He's not misbehaving," the Omega said quietly. "He's overwhelmed." The audacity. Adam's gaze sharpened. "You think I don't know that?" The Omega stepped forward anyway. The guards near the wall shifted, hands instinctively brushing inside their jackets. "If you continue saturating the room," the Omega continued, calm as rain, "he's going to hyperventilate." The room went deadly still. No one spoke to Animebl like that. Adam studied him. There was no trembling, no excessive submission, just quiet certainty. "What are you suggesting?" Adam asked. "Give me 60 seconds, the Omega said. "You don't have to let me touch him." Ringo let out another broken cry, burying his face into Adam's shoulder. Adam felt it then, the truth he refused to name. His son wasn't calming down in his arms. He was reacting to them. To him. Adam gave the slightest nod. The Omega approached slowly and crouched down to Ringo's level, not reaching out immediately. He kept his movements unthreatening. Grounded. "Hey!" he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "It's loud in here, huh?" Ringo's crying stuttered. The Omega didn't try to take him. He didn't interrupt Adam's hold. Instead, he shifted slightly closer and did something subtle, controlled. The air changed. Not dramatically, not aggressively. A gentle, warm note unfurled into the suffocating room. Omega pheromones. Soft, calming, like warm linen and rain on stone. Adam felt it brush against his senses. Steady, not provocative, not suggestive. Intentional. Ringo's breathing faltered, then slowed. The Omega spoke again. "You're safe. Your dad's right here." Ringo peeked up through wet lashes. The Omega didn't look at Adam when he said it. He was focused on the child. "Too many loud alphas," he added gently. "Your body just got confused." The boy's grip on Adam's collar loosened slightly. Adam's heart pounded harder than it had during gunfire. The Omega shifted even closer now, careful not to crowd. "May I sit?" Adam hesitated, then lowered himself onto the edge of the sofa without letting Ringo go. The Omega sat beside them, not touching, but close enough that his scent wrapped around the child like a shield. 30 seconds. That's all it took. Ringo's breathing evened out. The sobs softened into small hiccups. Then silence. The boy's body sagged against Adam's chest, exhausted. The entire room watched in stunned disbelief. Adam stared at his son. He had spent months hiring specialists, behavioral therapists, security adjustments. He'd redesigned entire floors of his estate. Nothing had worked like this. Adam's eyes lifted to the Omega. "What's your name?" "Paul," he replied simply. "Paul Jenkins. Are you trained?" "I studied nursing before I started working here." Adam studied him more carefully now. Paul didn't bask in the moment. He wasn't proud. He just watched Ringo with quiet attentiveness. Adam spoke slowly. "You understand that walking into this room uninvited was reckless." Paul met his gaze directly. "I understand that letting him spiral would have been worse." A murmur moved around the table. Adam didn't break eye contact. "You think you know what my son needs?" Adam asked. Paul's expression didn't waver. "I think he doesn't need more control," he said softly. "He needs to feel safe in a room full of power." Adam's jaw tightened. "And what are you implying?" Paul didn't flinch. "That your house," he said carefully, "is probably full of alphas." Silence. "You can protect him from enemies," Paul continued, "but you can't protect him from instinct. Not alone." The words landed like a blade. Adam felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not anger, not humiliation, recognition. Ringo shifted in his sleep, face peaceful now. Adam hadn't seen that expression in months. "You're on shift tonight?" Adam asked. "Yes." "You're not anymore." The alpha stiffened. Paul blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're coming with me," Adam said calmly. "Not as staff." Paul's eyes sharpened slightly. "I don't go anywhere without knowing the terms." The room collectively inhaled. Adam almost smiled. "Almost. Good," he said quietly. "Then we'll discuss them properly." He stood, lifting Ringo securely in his arms. As Adam walked toward the door, he paused beside Paul. "For what it's worth," Adam said low enough that only Paul could hear, "no one speaks to me like that." Paul held his gaze. "Maybe someone should." Adam stepped past him. For the first time in months, his son was asleep before they even reached the elevator. And for the first time in years, Adam Volov realized something dangerous. Power wasn't what he was missing. It was something far more terrifying. Need. By the time Adam's car pulled up to the Volov estate, Ringo was still asleep. He hadn't woken during the drive. He hadn't whimpered. He hadn't clutched at Adam's jacket like he usually did whenever the world felt too large. Instead, the boy's small hand rested loosely against Adam's chest, breathing steady, body relaxed. Adam hadn't felt this kind of silence in months. It unsettled him. Not the quiet itself, but the realization that he hadn't been the one to create it. The Volov estate rose behind iron gates and cold stone walls, more fortress than home. Cameras rotated silently. Guards straightened at the sight of their boss stepping out of the car. Paul followed behind, still in his restaurant uniform, his expression controlled but alert. He took in everything, the armed security, the scale of the property, the weight of the world he had just stepped into. "You understand," Adam said without looking at him, "that you could have refused." "I considered it," Paul replied. Adam glanced at him briefly. "Why didn't you?" Paul's answer came after a measured pause. "Because your son doesn't feel safe without me." Adam didn't respond. He carried Ringo inside. The interior of the estate was vast but sterile. High ceilings, dark marble floors, muted lighting. Expensive art. Clean lines. No warmth. Paul noticed. Adam laid Ringo carefully on the oversized couch in the private sitting room. The boy stirred but didn't wake. "His therapist will be here tomorrow," Adam said. "Therapist?" Paul asked. "Dr. Elias Romano, child psychologist." Paul nodded slowly. "That's good." Adam studied him. "You approve?" "I approve of anyone who thinks this is trauma, not discipline." Adam's gaze sharpened, but not in anger. In interest. They moved to Adam's office, walls lined with books, screens, and city maps. This was the heart of the empire. Adam closed the door. Now it was just the two of them. "You asked for terms," Adam said. "You'll have them." Paul stood straight but didn't shrink. "I'm listening." Adam leaned against the desk, folding his arms. "You move into the estate. You focus on Ringo's schedule, emotional regulation, sleep patterns. You will be compensated at $10,000 a month." Paul didn't blink. "You've already looked into me." "Yes. My father. His surgery will be covered. Private facility." Paul's throat tightened, but he masked it quickly. "And what's the cost?" Paul asked. Adam's voice dropped slightly. "You don't leave without clearance. You don't discuss what you see here. You do not interfere in my business." "And me?" Paul asked evenly. Adam's eyes darkened. "What about you?" "I'm an Omega," Paul said plainly. "I will not be marked. I will not be claimed. And I will not be used to calm you." The bluntness would have startled most men. Adam only tilted his head. "You assume I'd lose control." Paul held his gaze. "I assume you're still an alpha." A long silence followed. Adam could dominate this room in seconds if he wanted to. Instead, he said quietly, "You will not be touched without consent." Paul searched his face for signs of mockery. There were none. "Good," Paul replied. Adam straightened. "You start tomorrow." Ringo woke an hour later, disoriented. He sat up on the couch, blinking. Adam stepped toward him immediately, but paused when he saw the confusion flicker into fear. "Ringo," Adam said gently. The boy hesitated. "Where's?" His small voice cracked. "Paul?" Adam froze. He had expected it. It still struck like a blow. Paul stepped into the room from the hallway. "I'm here," he said softly. Ringo's shoulders dropped instantly. The boy slid off the couch and walked past Adam, straight into Paul's arms. Adam didn't move. He didn't breathe. Ringo pressed his face into Paul's shirt like it was something permanent. Paul crouched and held him carefully. No rush, no sudden movements. "I didn't leave," Paul murmured. "You're still safe." Adam felt it then. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something worse. Distance. His son trusted another person's presence more than his own. Paul looked up. Their eyes met. There was no accusation in Paul's expression. Only understanding. That made it harder. The next afternoon, Dr. Elias Romano arrived. He was younger than Adam expected, early 30s, composed, observant. A beta. Neutral scent. Calm posture. Elias knelt at eye level with Ringo, speaking gently, letting the boy set the pace. Paul watched closely. Adam watched Paul. After the session, Elias requested a private conversation. They met in Adam's office. You're suppressing too late, Elias said bluntly. Adam's expression cooled. Explain. You control your pheromones during negotiations, during threats, during violence. But at home, Elias leaned back slightly. You don't notice when you spike. Adam didn't respond. Elias continued. Your son associates heightened alpha presence with danger. It's a trauma imprint. And you believe the solution is? Adam asked flatly. Balance. Adam's jaw tightened. You brought an omega into this house, Elias continued. And your son responded immediately. Paul stood near the bookshelf, silent. Elias looked at him briefly before addressing Adam again. Children regulate through safety, not power. Adam's eyes darkened. I protect my son. I don't doubt that, Elias replied calmly. But protection and emotional safety are not the same thing. The words lingered. Paul finally spoke. He doesn't need you smaller, Paul said quietly. He just needs you softer. Adam looked at him sharply. Paul didn't look away. Can you do that? Elias asked. The question wasn't hostile. It was honest. Adam had faced assassins without hesitation. But this required surrender. Not weakness. Choice. After a long silence, Adam said, If that's what he needs. Elias nodded once. That's what he needs. That night, Ringo had a minor episode during dinner. One of Adam's captains arrived unexpectedly, voice raised, tension high. Ringo stiffened instantly. Adam felt it, the spike rising in his chest. The instinct to dominate, to assert, to silence. Paul's hand brushed his wrist under the table. Not restraining, grounding. Breathe, Paul murmured quietly. Adam forced himself to exhale slowly. He lowered his pheromones deliberately. Ringo looked up. The fear didn't fully form. Paul watched the shift happen in real time. So did Elias from across the room. For the first time since the bombing, Ringo didn't cry. Adam sat back slowly. Something fundamental had just changed. And for the first time in his life, Adam Vulov understood something terrifying. Power could command loyalty. Power could silence enemies. But power alone would never earn the trust of a child. That required something else entirely. Restraint. The first time Adam almost lost control, it wasn't in a boardroom. It wasn't during a raid. It wasn't even when a rival family tested his borders. It was in his own kitchen. 3 weeks after Paul moved into the estate, there were small changes no one spoke about. The house was quieter. Not silent, but calmer. Ringo no longer flinched at footsteps in the hall. He slept through most nights. He laughed once. An unguarded, surprised sound that had made Adam stop mid-conversation just to listen. The staff moved differently around Paul. Not deferential exactly. Not dismissive either. They were cautious at first. Omega in a house of alphas rarely lasted, but Paul wasn't fragile. He was deliberate. He never overstepped. But he also never shrank. Adam noticed everything. He noticed how Ringo ate better when Paul sat beside him. How the boy would instinctively reach for Paul's sleeve when anxious. How Paul never used pheromones casually, only when necessary, measured and controlled. And Adam noticed something else. Himself. He found himself monitoring his own breathing when entering a room Paul occupied. Checking his pheromone output the way he once checked security perimeters. It irritated him. Fascinated him. Scared him. The kitchen incident began with raised voices. One of Adam's captains had arrived unannounced to report movement near the docks. The conversation escalated quickly: territory, shipments, potential betrayal. The air thickened. Adam's alpha instinct sharpened, pushing outward. Dominance. Warning. Control. Across the kitchen island, Ringo stiffened immediately. Paul saw it first. He set down the glass of water he'd been holding and moved closer to the child. Adam didn't notice until he heard it, the smallest tremor in Ringo's breath. Enough, Paul said quietly. The room went still. The captain looked offended. This doesn't concern you. Paul didn't look at him. It concerns him, he replied calmly, nodding toward Ringo. Adam felt it then, the surge in his chest. The primal response to being corrected in his own house. His pheromones spiked sharply. The captain instinctively straightened. Paul did not. Instead, Paul stepped directly into Adam's space. Close enough to feel the heat of him. Lower it, Paul murmured, voice barely audible. Adam's eyes darkened. Careful, he warned softly. Paul's hand slid lightly against Adam's wrist. Steady, grounding. Ringo can't tell the difference between a threat and your anger, Paul said. To him, it feels the same. Adam inhaled sharply. The alpha inside him resisted. No one told him to soften. No one corrected him. But across the room, Ringo's eyes were wide. Fear, not rebellion, just fear. Adam exhaled slowly. Deliberately. He pulled his pheromones inward like raining in a storm. The shift was subtle but powerful. Ringo's shoulders relaxed almost instantly. Paul stepped back. The captain looked confused. Adam dismissed him with a flick of his hand. When they were alone, the silence stretched. You overstepped, Adam said quietly. Paul met his gaze without flinching. You almost lost him again. The words hit harder than any accusation. Adam didn't respond. He couldn't, because Paul was right. That night, Ringo insisted on sleeping in Paul's room. Adam watched as Paul tucked the boy in gently, humming something soft and low. Ringo's fingers curled into the fabric of Paul's shirt. Stay, the child mumbled. I'm right here, Paul promised. Adam stood in the doorway longer than necessary. When Ringo finally drifted into deep sleep, Paul carefully extricated himself and stepped into the hallway. Adam was still there, watching. You didn't have to contradict me in front of my men, Adam said. Paul leaned against the wall, folding his arms. You didn't have to prove you were stronger. Adam's jaw tightened. That's how this world works. And how's that working for him? Paul asked quietly. Adam stepped closer. Don't mistake my patience for weakness. Paul's pulse quickened, but he didn't move away. I don't think you're weak, he said. I think you're scared. The word landed between them like a spark near gasoline. Adam moved fast. He closed the distance, one hand bracing against the wall beside Paul's head. Not trapping, just close enough to feel heat and breath. You think I'm afraid? Adam murmured. Paul's throat tightened. Yes. Adam's pheromones rose, not aggressively, but intensely. Thick, dark, magnetic. Paul felt it like gravity. But he didn't bow. You're afraid? Paul continued, voice steady despite the tremor in his pulse. That if you soften, you won't know who you are anymore. Silence. Adam's hand slowly lowered from the wall. For a moment, neither moved. Then Adam did something unexpected. He stepped back. You should go to bed, he said quietly. Paul watched him walk away. But something had shifted. Not broken. Shifted. The following afternoon, Dr. Elias returned for another session. This time, Ringo spoke more freely. He drew pictures, one of the estate, one of Adam, one of Paul. Adam's figure was tall and dark, drawn with heavy strokes. Paul's figure was smaller, but colored in warm tones. Elias studied the drawings. Ringo, Elias asked gently, what happens when Daddy gets loud? The boy hesitated. He gets big, Ringo whispered. And when Paul is here? Ringo smiled slightly. He smells like safe. Adam felt something inside his chest fracture. Elias dismissed Ringo to play in the adjacent room. Then he faced Adam directly. You're not losing him, Elias said calmly. You're teaching him that power can feel safe. Adam's voice was low. He prefers Paul. Elias didn't deny it. Right now? Yes. The word cut deeper than any blade. But that doesn't mean you're being replaced, Elias continued. It means you have to meet him somewhere he understands. Adam stared at the drawings on the desk. I don't know how to be less, he admitted quietly. Paul, standing near the window, turned toward him. "You don't have to be less," Paul said softly. "Just different." Adam looked at him. The air between them shifted again. But this time it wasn't conflict. It was recognition. That night, it was Adam who went to Ringo's room first. He sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't reach immediately. He didn't let his pheromones flare. "Hey," he said quietly. Ringo blinked up at him. Adam opened his arms, not commanding. Not urgent. Just open. After a moment, Ringo crawled forward. Adam held him gently. Not tight. Not controlling. Just steady. Paul watched from the doorway. For the first time, Ringo didn't stiffen. He didn't hesitate. He rested his head against Adam's shoulder and sighed. Adam closed his eyes. The victory was small, but it was real. When Paul turned to leave, Adam followed him into the hall. "Stay," Adam said softly. Paul stopped. Adam stepped closer, but this time there was no dominance in the movement. Only honesty. "I don't want you here just for him," Adam admitted. Paul's breath caught. The confession hung heavy. "I know," Paul said quietly. Adam's hand lifted slowly, giving Paul time to pull away. He didn't. Adam's fingers brushed Paul's jaw gently. The contact was electric, but restrained. "This isn't instinct," Adam murmured. Paul searched his eyes. "Then what is it?" Adam leaned in, slow enough that Paul could stop him. He didn't. The kiss was deliberate. Not claiming. Not rushed. Deep. Warm. Intentional. When they parted, Adam rested his forehead lightly against Paul's. "I don't know how to do this," Adam admitted. Paul's lips curved faintly. "Good," he whispered. "That means you're choosing it." And for the first time in his life, Adam Vulov chose something not because he could control it, but because he needed it. The first crack did not come from outside the estate. Came from within. Colin Vulov had always walked like he owned the ground beneath him. Where Adam was controlled fire, Colin was exposed flame. Bright, impatient, reckless. He entered the estate late one evening without announcement, shrugging off his coat and scanning the room with visible disdain. He hadn't visited in weeks. That alone was deliberate. Paul was in the sitting room with Ringo, helping him build a crooked tower out of wooden blocks. The boy was laughing quietly, his small fingers careful, concentrated. Adam stood nearby, reviewing messages on his phone, but not far. Never far. Colin stopped in the doorway. His gaze landed on Paul first, then Ringo, then the space between them. "Well," Colin drawled, "this is new." Adam didn't look up. "You weren't invited." Colin stepped further in anyway. "I heard rumors. I had to see for myself." Ringo glanced up, uncertain. Paul's body shifted subtly, placing himself slightly between the child and Colin without making it obvious. Colin noticed. Of course he did. "You replaced security with a babysitter?" Colin said, lips curving faintly. "He's not security," Adam replied evenly. "That's what concerns me." Paul didn't rise to the bait. He continued adjusting the tower, voice soft with Ringo. "Last block," Paul encouraged. "Careful." Ringo placed it successfully. The tower stood. Colin's eyes hardened. "You bring an Omega into the center of our operations," Colin continued, turning toward Adam now. "You let him sit in on meetings. You let him influence you." Adam finally looked up. "Watch your tone." Colin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You think I don't see it? You're softer." The word lingered like an insult. Paul rose slowly, brushing dust from his hands. "Ringo," he said gently, "why don't you show me that drawing you made for Dr. Elias?" The boy nodded and scampered off down the hall. Now it was only the three of them. Adam's expression was unreadable. "Leave," he told Colin. Colin laughed under his breath. "You're proving my point." "And what point is that?" Adam asked quietly. "That you're forgetting what kind of world this is. The temperature in the room shifted. Paul could feel it, the subtle rise in alpha tension. Colin stepped closer to Adam. You built this empire because you never needed anyone. You never let attachment cloud judgment. Adam's jaw tightened. And now, Colin gestured loosely toward the hallway where Ringo had gone. Now you let a stranger tell you how to breathe. Paul's pulse jumped, but he held steady. He's not a stranger, Adam said. Colin's eyes flicked to Paul. No? Then what is he? Silence. Adam didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. Colin's expression darkened. You think the other families don't see this? He pressed. They're waiting. They smell weakness. Paul finally spoke. Ringo doesn't smell weakness, he said calmly. He smells fear. Colin turned sharply toward him. You don't get to speak in this house. Paul didn't back down. I already did. Adam's pheromones spiked at the tension. Colin's rose in response. The air thickened, electric, volatile. Enough, Adam said sharply. But Colin wasn't finished. You're losing perspective, Colin continued. You let your emotions dictate your decisions. That's how men get killed. Adam stepped forward now, eyes like winter steel. I'm still standing. For now. The implication hung heavy. Paul felt it immediately. This wasn't just criticism. It was warning. Later that night, Adam stood alone in his office. City lights glowed beyond the window. Messages flashed across multiple screens. Territories shifting, alliances bending, rumors spreading. Colin wasn't wrong about one thing. The other families were watching. Adam replayed the confrontation in his mind. He hadn't denied it. He hadn't denied Paul. That realization unsettled him more than Colin's accusations. A soft knock sounded at the door. Paul stepped in quietly. You shouldn't antagonize him, Paul said gently. Adam didn't turn. He antagonized you. That's not the same thing. Adam finally faced him. You think I can't see what he's doing? Paul studied him. I think he believes he's protecting you. Adam's laugh was humorless. By undermining me? By trying to remind you who you used to be. Adam's gaze darkened. And what if I don't want to be that person? The words came out before he could stop them. Paul's breath caught. Adam ran a hand through his hair. A rare, unguarded gesture. When Isabella died, he said quietly, I stopped feeling anything except control. It was easier. Paul stepped closer. And now, Adam met his eyes. Now I feel everything. The admission hung fragile between them. Paul reached up slowly, giving Adam time to refuse. He didn't. Paul's fingers brushed along Adam's jaw. You're not weaker, Paul said softly. You're just not empty anymore. Adam closed his eyes briefly. For a man who commanded fear across the city, this was the most dangerous territory he had ever stepped into. Not war, not betrayal, but vulnerability. He opened his eyes again. Colin won't let this go, Adam said quietly. Paul nodded. No. A long silence passed. Then Adam spoke with absolute certainty. I won't let him take it from me. Take what? Paul asked. Adam's hand settled at Paul's waist. Not possessive, but firm. This. Not the estate. Not the empire. Paul searched his expression carefully. This has to be chosen, Paul said softly. Not defended like territory. Adam's thumb traced lightly against Paul's side. I am choosing it. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, unseen wheels were already turning. Colin wasn't a man who accepted change. And he wasn't a man who accepted being ignored. The first fracture had appeared. Soon it would split wide open. And when it did, Adam would have to decide what kind of alpha he truly intended to be. The warning signs began quietly. A delayed shipment. A patrol that failed to report in. Two captains arguing over instructions Adam never gave. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to suggest something was loosening at the edges. Adam noticed. He always did. But what unsettled him wasn't the disruption. It was the pattern. Every disturbance traced back to one person, Colin. Paul sensed the shift before anyone explained it to him. The estate felt tighter. Guards rotated more frequently. Conversations ended abruptly when he entered a room. One night, as Paul finished settling Ringo into bed, the boy's small fingers curled around his sleeve. "Uncle Colin doesn't like you," Ringo said quietly. Paul stilled. "Why do you think that?" "He looks at you like you're taking something." Paul swallowed carefully. "What do you think I'm taking?" Ringo considered that seriously. "Daddy." The word landed heavier than Paul expected. He brushed his thumb gently across Ringo's forehead. "I'm not taking him," Paul said softly. "He's still your dad." Ringo's brow furrowed. "Then why does Uncle Colin look angry?" "Because change threatens people who built their identity on what used to be." But Paul couldn't say that. "Sometimes," Paul murmured, "grown-ups get scared too." Ringo relaxed slightly. "Daddy doesn't look scared anymore." Paul smiled faintly. "No, he doesn't." The call came just after midnight. Adam was in his office when one of his most trusted captains reported a warehouse raid, information that should have remained internal. Adam listened without interruption. Then he ended the call and stared at the dark window. Inside job. There were only 3 men who knew that schedule. Adam, the captain, Colin. The door opened without knocking. Colin entered like he owned the air. "You look busy," he said casually. Adam didn't turn. "Was it worth it?" Colin's expression shifted slightly. "Was what worth it?" "The message," Adam replied calmly. Colin's jaw tightened. "You're accusing me." "I'm observing you." Silence crackled between them. "You're distracted," Colin said finally. "That warehouse shouldn't have been vulnerable." "It wasn't," Adam replied. "Until someone made it so." Colin stepped forward, eyes burning now. "You think I'd sabotage my own family?" "I think you'd test me." Colin laughed once, short, sharp. "Test you? You're testing yourself. You're choosing sentiment over strategy." Adam finally turned to face him. "And you're choosing destruction over evolution." Colin's nostrils flared slightly. "You've let an omega alter the core of this house. I've let him protect my son. By making you soft?" Adam's voice dropped. "Dangerous. Controlled. By reminding me what I'm protecting." Colin shook his head slowly. "You're not the man you used to be." "Good." The word cut cleanly. Colin stared at him. "That man kept us untouchable." "That man nearly lost everything," Adam replied. Colin's expression darkened. "You think I'm the threat?" Adam didn't hesitate. "Yes." The room went still. "You would choose him," Colin said quietly. "Over blood." Adam's gaze didn't waver. "I would choose what keeps my son alive." Colin stepped back slightly, something colder settling in his eyes. "Then you're already lost." The attack came 2 days later. Not on a warehouse. On the estate. It wasn't a full assault. More like a precision strike. Security systems flickered. Perimeter cameras glitched. A black SUV breached the outer gates for exactly 45 seconds before retreating. It was enough. Enough to send a message. Enough to prove vulnerability. Paul heard the first alarm while helping Ringo with homework. The boy stiffened instantly. Paul's heart kicked hard in his chest, but his voice stayed calm. "Look at me," he said gently. "Stay with me." The alarms blared again. Footsteps thundered in the hall. Paul lifted Ringo into his arms. "Where's Daddy?" Ringo whispered. "He's coming," Paul said firmly. Adam was already in motion, coordinating through his earpiece, directing guards, isolating systems. He reached the sitting room just as Paul stepped into the hallway with Ringo clinging tightly to him. Their eyes locked. "Inside," Adam ordered. Paul didn't argue. He moved quickly toward the reinforced inner corridor. Adam followed, adrenaline sharp in his veins, but something else sharper still. Fear. Not for himself. For them. The breach was contained within minutes. No one reached the interior. No shots were fired. But the message was clear. Someone had tested the walls. And someone inside had known where to push. Later that night, Ringo finally fell asleep after Paul lay beside him for nearly an hour. Adam stood in the doorway again, watching. When Paul stepped out quietly and closed the door behind him, Adam caught his wrist. "You're shaking," Adam said softly. Paul exhaled slowly. "I'm not used to alarms." Adam pulled him closer without thinking. This time it wasn't restrained. It wasn't measured. It was instinct. Paul felt the full weight of Adam's arms around him. Tight, protective, almost desperate. "They came because of me," Adam said against Paul's hair. "They came because someone wanted you angry," Paul replied. Adam pulled back slightly. "You're not afraid?" he asked. Paul met his gaze. "I am," he admitted. "But not of you." Adam's jaw tightened. "I won't let anything happen to you." Paul's expression softened, but his words were steady. "That's not what I need." Adam frowned slightly. "What do you need?" Paul lifted his hand and placed it over Adam's chest. "I need you to stay the man you're becoming. Not the ruthless alpha. Not the grieving widower. The one who chose." Adam stared at him. The tension between them shifted from fear to something deeper. Adam lowered his forehead against Paul's. "They think this makes me weak," Adam murmured. Paul's lips brushed his lightly. "Then let them be wrong." The kiss that followed wasn't urgent. It wasn't born of adrenaline. It was affirmation. Outside, security teams swept the grounds. Inside, something else solidified. Adam pulled back slightly, eyes steady now. "It was Colin," he said quietly. Paul nodded. "Yes." Adam exhaled slowly. "I gave him a chance. And now," Adam's gaze hardened, not cruel, resolved. "Now I finish this. Not with rage. Not with blind dominance. But with clarity." The fracture in the family had widened. The next move would decide whether it shattered or healed. The meeting was set at dawn. Neutral ground. An abandoned shipping warehouse overlooking the gray Atlantic. Wind tearing at rusted metal and broken windows. The kind of place where men came to make statements. Adam arrived first. He didn't bring an army. Only 4 trusted guards and Luca at his side. It wasn't recklessness. It was calculation. Colin would expect overwhelming force. Adam wanted him to see something else. Control. Colin stepped inside 10 minutes later. No hesitation. No apology. He looked almost amused. "You came light," Colin observed, glancing at the sparse security. "I didn't come to fight," Adam replied evenly. Colin's mouth curved faintly. "That's the problem." The wind howled through the cracked walls. For a moment, they were just brothers standing in the ruins of something they had built together. "You breached the estate," Adam said calmly. Colin didn't deny it. "You needed a reminder." "I needed loyalty." "You needed clarity." Adam's gaze hardened. "You endangered my son." Colin's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't retreat. "No one crossed the inner corridor." "That wasn't the point," Adam replied. Colin stepped closer, voice lowering. "You've forgotten what keeps us alive." Adam didn't move. "What keeps us alive," he said quietly, "is knowing what we're fighting for." Colin's eyes flashed. "We fight for power." "No," Adam said. "We fought for survival." "There's a difference." The wind rattled loose tin above them. Colin's voice sharpened. "You think softness will protect him? You think rival families won't see the shift? They already are." Adam's expression didn't change. "Let them." Colin stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "You would gamble the empire for an omega?" Adam's voice dropped to something colder than anger. "I would reshape the empire so my son doesn't grow up afraid of his own father." Silence fell heavy. Colin shook his head slowly. "You're not the alpha I followed. Then you're free to stop." The words landed like a verdict. Colin's hands curled slightly at his sides. You're exiling me. Adam's answer was steady. Yes. The finality of it echoed in the cavernous warehouse. You'd cast out your own blood. You forced my hand. Colin laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You're making a mistake. Possibly, Adam said, but it's mine to make. Colin's eyes flickered. Anger, betrayal, something almost like hurt. You think he'll stay? Colin asked suddenly. When the next war comes? When the next threat knocks on your door? Adam didn't hesitate. Yes. The certainty in his voice didn't waver. Colin searched his face for doubt. He didn't find any. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Colin stepped back. If you fall, he said quietly, don't expect me to catch you. Adam's voice was calm. I never did. Colin turned and walked out into the wind. Adam watched him go. Not as an enemy, not as a brother, but as a chapter closing. When Adam returned to the estate, the sun was already climbing over the horizon. The gates opened smoothly. Security had been doubled overnight. Inside, the house felt tense, but intact. Paul was in the garden with Ringo. Adam paused just inside the glass doors, unseen for a moment. Ringo was chasing a small drone toy across the lawn, laughter light and unguarded. Paul stood nearby, sleeves rolled up, sunlight catching in his dark hair. It looked normal, peaceful. Adam had spent years building something untouchable. And yet this quiet morning felt more valuable than any territory. Paul noticed him first. Their eyes met through the glass. Paul's expression sharpened slightly, searching for answers. Adam stepped outside. Ringo saw him and ran forward immediately. Daddy! Adam knelt, catching him easily. He inhaled slowly, keeping his pheromones low, steady. Ringo wrapped his arms around his neck without hesitation. No stiffness, no fear, just trust. Adam closed his eyes briefly. When he stood again, Paul was closer now. Well? Paul asked softly. Adam held his gaze. He's gone. Paul nodded once. Will he come back? Not unless he chooses to stand against me openly. Paul studied his face. You didn't kill him. Adam's voice was even. No. Why? Adam didn't look away. Because Ringo doesn't need to learn that blood solves everything. The words lingered between them. Paul's chest tightened faintly. You're changing the rules, he said. I'm rewriting them. Paul stepped closer. And if the others push? Adam's eyes darkened, not with rage, with resolve. Then they'll learn what kind of alpha I've become. The air shifted between them. Not tense. Not volatile. Solid. Paul reached up and brushed his fingers lightly against Adam's jaw. You chose? Paul murmured. Yes. Adam's hand slid to Paul's waist. Not possessive. Not territorial. Intentional. I won't lose you, Adam said quietly. Paul's breath caught, but he didn't step back. You won't, he replied. As long as you keep choosing. Adam leaned in. The kiss wasn't urgent. It wasn't driven by adrenaline or fear. It was grounding. A seal on a decision already made. Behind them, Ringo giggled as the drone buzzed too close to a tree. Adam pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against Paul's. They'll test me again, he admitted. Paul smiled faintly. Good. Adam arched a brow. Why good? Because this time, Paul said, you're not fighting alone. Adam looked at him carefully. For years, partnership had meant leverage. Alliance. Mutual benefit. This was different. This was shared direction. Ringo ran back toward them, breathless and bright-eyed. Did Uncle Colin leave? He asked. Adam crouched slightly so he was eye level. Yes. Is he mad? Maybe, Adam said honestly. Ringo thought about that. Are you mad? Adam glanced briefly at Paul before answering. No. Ringo nodded solemnly. Good. I don't like when you're mad. Adam felt something inside his chest settle permanently. He stood, taking Paul's hand openly. Not hidden, not subtle. The staff saw, the guards saw, and none of them questioned it. Because the alpha of this house had made his decision clear. The fracture had not shattered them. It had refined them. And for the first time since the bombing, the Vulov estate felt less like a fortress, and more like a home. 6 months later, the Vulov estate no longer felt like a monument to control. Felt lived in. The marble floors were the same. The security cameras still rotated. Armed guards still stood watch at the gates. Adam's empire had not shrunk. If anything, it had grown more disciplined, quieter, more precise. But inside the walls, something fundamental had changed. The silence was no longer heavy. It was calm. Adam stood at the window of his office one late afternoon, overlooking the gardens now dusted in early winter frost. Reports flickered across the screens behind him. Territories stabilized, alliances reaffirmed, rival families recalibrated. Colin had not returned. A few factions had tested the waters in his absence. They'd expected instability. A power vacuum. They'd found none. Adam had responded not with fury, but with clarity. Strategic adjustments. Negotiated leverage. Ruthless where necessary, restrained where possible. The message had spread quickly. The alpha had not weakened. He had evolved. A knock sounded at the door. It opened without waiting for permission. Paul stepped inside, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled. "There's a small uprising in the East Garden," he said solemnly. Adam arched a brow. "Ringo refuses to wear his coat." Adam exhaled slowly and shut down the screen. "An act of rebellion," he murmured. "Highly organized," Paul replied. They walked down the hall together. The staff no longer looked startled seeing them side by side. No whispers, no tension. It had taken time. But loyalty, like trust, adjusted when leadership was consistent. In the garden, Ringo stood stubbornly in the frost, arms crossed over his tiny chest, glaring at the puffy coat draped over a bench. "It's too big," he declared when he saw Adam. Adam crouched down to eye level. "It's winter. I don't like it." Adam considered him seriously. "Then we find one you do like." Ringo blinked. "That's it." Adam nodded. "You don't have to like everything. You just have to stay warm." Ringo seemed satisfied with that compromise. Paul watched the exchange quietly. This was not the man he had met in the private dining room months ago. That alpha would have commanded obedience. This one negotiated. Not from weakness, from confidence. Ringo ran toward the house, already planning his new coat demands. Paul stepped closer to Adam. "You didn't even raise your voice," he observed. Adam slid a glance at him. "I didn't need to." Paul smiled faintly. There it was again, that quiet pride Adam had come to recognize. It did something dangerous to his chest. Later that evening, after Ringo had been tucked into bed, insisting Adam read the same story twice, Paul found Adam in the sitting room. No screens. No reports. Just a low fire burning and a rare moment of stillness. Paul crossed the room slowly. "You missed a call from Luca," he said lightly. "It can wait." Paul stopped in front of him. "That's new." Adam looked up at him, expression steady. "So are you." Paul felt warmth creep up his neck. "You regret it?" he asked quietly. Adam didn't pretend not to understand. "Choosing you." Paul nodded. Adam stood slowly. There was no tension in the movement. No performance. Just presence. "I regret not doing it sooner." The words settled into the room like something sacred. Paul's breath caught faintly. "You could have kept your life simpler," Paul said. Adam stepped closer. "My life was never simple." Paul searched his face carefully. "And now?" Adam's hand rose, fingers brushing gently along Paul's jaw. "Now it's honest." The air between them shifted. Not heated. Not volatile. Steady. Adam leaned in, kissing Paul slowly. No urgency. no fear of interruption. The kind of kiss built from months of deliberate choices. When they parted, Paul rested his forehead against Adam's chest. "You know they're still watching," Paul murmured. "I know. Waiting for a crack." Adam's hand settled at Paul's back. "They'll keep waiting." Paul leaned back slightly, studying him. "Why are you so sure?" Adam's gaze softened, not weak, but certain. "Because this isn't a fracture anymore." Outside, snow began to fall lightly across the estate grounds. Inside, warmth held. A week later, Adam returned unexpectedly early from a meeting downtown. He entered quietly, removing his coat in the foyer. Laughter echoed faintly from the living room. Adam paused. Ringo was on the carpet, surrounded by building blocks. Paul sat cross-legged beside him, attempting to construct something tall and complicated. "It's supposed to be the estate," Paul was saying seriously. Ringo squinted at the crooked tower. "It looks like a sandwich." Paul gasped theatrically. "This is architecture." Adam stepped fully into the room. They both looked up. Ringo grinned. "Daddy." Adam knelt beside them. "What are we building?" "Our house," Ringo announced proudly. Adam looked at the uneven stack of blocks. "It's missing something," he observed. "What?" Ringo asked. Adam reached over and placed one final block carefully at the center. "A foundation." Ringo beamed. Paul's eyes met Adam's across the tiny structure. They both understood the symbolism without saying it aloud. Ringo leaned against Adam's arm casually, no hesitation. Paul shifted closer too. For a long moment, they simply stayed like that, three bodies grounded in one space. No alarms. No raised voices. No fractures. Adam looked down at his son. Then at Paul. "I used to think power was what held everything together," he said quietly. Paul smiled softly. "And now?" Adam intertwined his fingers with Paul's openly. "Now I know better." Ringo glanced up at them. "Know what?" Adam kissed the top of his son's head. "That the strongest thing in this house isn't fear." Ringo considered that seriously. "It's Paul." Paul laughed softly. Adam didn't. "It's us," he corrected gently. Ringo nodded, satisfied. Outside, snow continued to fall, layer by quiet layer, covering old footprints, old damage, old scars. Inside, the Vulov estate stood unchanged in structure, but entirely transformed in meaning. The Alpha had not lost his edge. He had chosen where to use it, and what remained was not an empire built on control, but a family built on choice. And that's how the most feared Alpha in the city learned that strength isn't measured by dominance, but by the courage to choose love. Adam protected an empire with power, but he protected his family with restraint. And in the end,